Jack M. I watched and read a lot of stories from ex-Scientology members. Almost all, to the best of my recollection, escaped Scientology because of mismanagement. In your opinion, if management was not the issue, do you believe Scientology's member count would be close to, let's say, Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormon numbers? Or do you believe the degree of nonsense would eventually result in members leaving the same way that they are leaving now? Okay, so mismanagement is a pretty broad, generic term, but I know what you're talking about, because I think what you're referring to here are by mismanagement, we're talking about the abusive behavior of Scientology. If Scientology were not abusive, all right? Because when exes talk about mismanagement, they're talking about David Miscavige violating the scriptures of L. Ron Hubbard, as these Scientologists understood them. And so they felt like they were being persecuted or victimized by the church as an entity, or by individuals, powerful individuals within the church, like Miscavige or whoever was dealing with them, probably a Sea Org member or a staff member. And so they felt like the system was being twisted and turned and thwarted on them, and that they were getting a bum steer, a bum rap, and they got kicked out of the church, or they left the church, and they thought, it's been corrupted, David Miscavige is screwing over Hubbard's intention, and so, you're asking, well, if that wasn't happening, would Scientology be growing? No, it wouldn't be. And the reason for that is because, a couple things. It wouldn't have Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormon numbers no matter what, because those guys have been around for a lot longer and been building up their customer base for decades, Mormons over 100 years. So they've had a lot more time to build up to the millions of members that they actually have. Scientology is, very, very young in that regard. And it's not a growing, thriving thing. It hasn't been since the 70s, really. I mean, maybe, some period in the 80s. So, but it was never really over 1 million members. It never achieved those kind of numbers. So it would take, a long time to build that up. But the conditions you're asking about, of course, the reason I say no is because Scientology makes promises that it absolutely, positively does not deliver on within the span of a person's life. See, the thing about Christianity and about, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, or the thousands and thousands of other denominations of Christianity out there are that they are all predicated on the idea that you are going to have immortality in a paradise existence outside of this life when you die. And that's it. That's all they're really promising. They're not, they're saying, look, there's all these strictures, all these things you have to do, and there's hundreds and thousands of different ideas and guidelines and rules. So we don't even need to get into the specifics of what those rules are. But they all do have some rules. There's some kind of system in place there, right? That's what makes them a denomination of Christianity, is that there is a Christ belief, and there's this idea that, that you believe in him and the salvation, and you're going to end up in a better place or somehow have this closer relationship with Jesus and with God. That's all stuff that happens after you die. The only thing you're being promised in this life, as I understand it from Christianity, is a closer relationship with the Spirit and with, and perhaps, moments of epiphany and religious awe, and moments of fervor, but not superpowers, right? These are very different things. These spiritual experiences are very different from superpowers, right? And Scientology makes clear-cut promises that it will relieve medical problems, that it will relieve bad eyesight, that beyond the body, that it will, it's a prosperity gospel in many ways in Scientology. You're constantly promised that if you pay now, you will see that return to you tenfold by doing Scientology. I've never really worded it that way, but that is part of the sales process of Scientology, for sure. So, of course, my point being with all of this, that we can argue specifics, but the overall point here is that Scientology is making this lifetime promises. that you are supposed to see manifest before you in this world, in the here and now. It does not deliver on those promises. You can only fake it till you make it for so long. And it's really quite impressive how long some Scientologists fake it till they make it, and they never make it, and they end up, leaving, or more often, especially with the OT8s these days, who haven't died off, is that they just fly under the radar. They just kind of disappear and fade away from Scientology. I think if you did a census count on OT8s, you'd have some pretty interesting results as far as how many of them are just gone. And not, some of them have died, but others have just gone. And they're just out of Scientology, and they don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. So anyway, that might be an interesting stat to get. So, but you don't have to get to OT8 to realize that this is all just kind of smoke and mirrors, and you're being promised the sun, moon, and stars and being delivered a cow pie on a plate, right? So there's a point where people realize that these promises are not manifesting, that they are not getting all these gains they're supposed to be getting. And that's the real start of the road out. It's just that when there's this mismanagement situation, it just exacerbates and speeds up the process. But it doesn't, I wouldn't say it's the causative. The beginning of the end was not when the ethics officer started yelling at you. The beginning of the end was when you came out of, the auditing session, your 100th auditing session, and you're still at grade 1 on the grade chart. You've paid in $50,000, and you still are thinking, I still got as many problems now as I did when I first got here. That's the beginning of the end, you see. But it needs that little spark needs to be fanned and blown on and exacerbated into what it really is, which is, the truth is there's nothing here, right? There's no there in Scientology, and once you realize that, the abusive stuff, the mismanagement, as you're calling it in your question, just speeds that process up, I think. So So anyway, that's my answer to that.